Council may move and seconder to call the meeting to order. Fisher and Deputy Cabral, that the special meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater on May 3rd come to order at 5:05 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And seeing none, I will now call upon Detachment Commander Lee Gilfroy and Sergeant Lisa Rodar. Is it Rodar? Okay, thank you. And we also have with us Mr. Giffen of the Municipal Police Bureau and to present a presentation to us. And please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship, Council.
Just checking for feedback. Checking for feedback. Checking for feedback. And we're good. Please continue.
So today, this is an overview of what I will speak about. If you can go to the next slide. Again, we're going to talk about OPP service delivery, annual expenditures, billing model, municipal policing costs for Springwater Township, Section 10 agreements versus Section 5.1 policing arrangements, and the Community Safety Policing Act, or the CSPA. If you have any questions while I'm presenting, feel free to ask as well. There will be opportunity at the end. Okay, so next. So before we discuss billing, it's important to understand how the OPP provides service to police services to the province of Ontario, where we serve over 14 million people spanning across 1.1 million kilometers square of land and waterways and 330 municipalities on a cost recovery basis. Detachments operate on an integrated service delivery model, which allows for flexibility, blending and sharing of resources to provide policing services to contract and non-contract municipalities, in addition to meeting provincial policing responsibilities. Officers will often work in multiple locations and municipalities during a shift, which allows for coordinated policing strategies and also allows communities to engage with partner and various agencies outside of the municipal boundaries. With the implementation of our GPS technology, our dispatchers know the location of all logged on units, which ensures a more efficient response by utilizing officers that are geographically closer to a high priority call for service. The OPP tracks services provided using the Daily Activity Reporting System, or the DAR system, which ensures municipalities don't pay for provincial resources or obligations. Next slide. So this slide here provides a breakdown of the cost allocation for all the services the OPP provide, both at the municipal and provincial level. These figures are based on estimated costs for 2020-2021. I will be referring to the 2023 estimated costs further on. So this pie chart just basically provides an illustration of how the money is allocated to and what the services the OPP provides. So if we look at the provincial or specialized responsibilities section, 64% make up our mandated provincial responsibilities, which include traffic safety, investigations, intelligence, and specialized response teams. Under the municipal policing resources section, these are the costs for municipal policing that are recovered from municipalities, which include frontline detachment staff and support positions that are required to meet our service demands. So this means that the OPP need to recover $412 million to provide back to the provincial government. So next slide. So what does this mean? On the provincial responsibility side, 64% of the total $1.2 billion budget, or $778 million, is accounted for by the provincial government. These services are provided to all municipalities that the OPP police at no cost recovery directly from the municipalities. These services include, again, traffic safety, investigations, intelligence, specialized response teams such as our True Search and Rescue Auxiliary Unit, community safety, Indigenous policing, and our unincorporated territories. So again, this is a provincial responsibility, which means that these resources are provided to the OPP police municipalities at no cost recovery. Okay, next slide. So the 34% or $412 million is the estimated total cost recovery for providing municipal policing services to all the municipalities that the OPP police. These resources again include your detachment staff, which includes supervision, frontline constables and civilian support, as well as our support positions, such as our communication operators, prisoner guards, academy, and regional headquarters. Okay, next slide. This is how we recover our $412 million. It's through the OPP Billing Model. This diagram again shows the development of our model with its deep roots in engagement sessions and consultations with the ministries, agencies, associations, and our municipalities. To the left of the slide, each line represents a municipality and how they were paying in 2014 prior to the model, dollars being the scale from top to bottom. You can see how the gap or the disparity has been addressed through the implementation of the model. To address transparency, reports and annual billing statements are customized to show each municipality's specific information as related to their calls for service and billing. Annually, we hold webinars when the statements are distributed. We'll do presentations and provide explanation at the request of municipalities, just as we're here today. Billing information is posted on opp.ca for public access. Next slide. Right. So this is the 2023 estimated cost recovery under the OPP billing model. This diagram shows the breakdown for how $417 million will be recovered from municipalities. The cost recovery is broken down into three categories: base services, calls for service, and other costs. Base services costs are allocated on a per property basis, being $165.66 for a total cost recovery of $199 million. Currently, the OPP police 330 municipalities and 1,202,724 properties. Property counts are updated annually based on MPAC data and include household, commercial, and industrial properties. So again, the calculation for your base service cost is $165.66 per property times the total property number, which equals $199 million. Calls for service and other costs are both based on individual municipalities' usage level. The 2023 calls for service total cost recovery based on all the municipalities the OPP provides policing services to is $178 million. The other costs for 2023 are estimated at $40 million, and each municipality is billed based on contract agreements and usage. For example, your overtime, court security, prisoner transportation, accommodation and cleaning, and enhancements as applicable. So we will look at page 3 of your annual billing statement that shows the calculation for each of these three costs, which are done annually. Any questions here? Okay, next slide. So again, this is on page 3 of your billing statement. And again, it's detailed to show exactly how our base services, calls for service, and other direct operating expenses are calculated. And I've color coded them to match the previous slide where you can see. So again, our base services cost, which is in orange, are costs allocated on an equal per property basis, and the calls for service and ODE are allocated based on individual usage. So to calculate the base services cost, at the bottom of the page, you'll see $165.66 per property cost is figured by taking the total base services cost of just under 200 million and dividing it or sharing it with all the OPP police properties, being again that 1,202,724 properties. And that's how we come to that number. To calculate the calls for service, $178 million for calls for service is proportionately allocated by usage for each OPP municipality. We'll look further on slide 9. What's important to remember is that the calls for service count uses a 4-year average of reconciled calls for service, which is multiplied by the current year average time standard to investigate the call within each service billing working group. So once this is calculated, the percentage of the total provincial weighted time for your calls for service is then allocated from that $178 million total. And again, to calculate our other direct operating expenses, $32 million calculation is the sum of all the listed expenses that you can see there. And again, it's a shared cost as well, or allocated. Sorry, as allocated. Yeah, I hope you can see that number if you had a chance to digest. Are there any questions at this point for that? No? Okay. Next slide, please. So again, this just touches on, again, a quick, another look at the municipal cost recovery under the billing model, just to impact that base services are allocated among all municipalities on an equal per property basis, which is calculated through MPAC to give us that property count. And base service cost is your proactive policing, things like crime prevention, your ride spot checks, traffic safety, community policing, officer training, administrative duty, and all inspector and staff sergeant positions. And the calls for service, again, are allocated costs based on individual usage. And calls for service represent our reactive policing services. So when a person picks up the phone, reports something, and the police attend to investigate break and enter, mischief, assault, missing person, provide assistance or well-being checks, whatever it may be. And municipalities are billed for the actual number and types of calls for service they receive. Okay. And again, we also have your additional costs on there that we talked about, your overtime, court security, prisoner transportation, accommodation, and cleaning and enhancements. So here, what this slide shows again is our cost recovery trends at the provincial level. So the blue bars are all elements being your calls for service, base services, and other costs combined that are recovered from municipalities yearly. The red bars show the average cost from 2014 to 2023. So in 2023, the cost is $347. And although the recovered costs continue to rise, the cost per property for the municipalities remains stable. And that's the whole point that we want to show with our billing model. It's stable costing, the trend. Okay, next slide. So this is your 2023 calls for service billing summary. And as you can see, all billable calls for service are classified into 9 separate billing working groups. And each working group has a separate average time standard, which is adjusted annually. So the time standards apply to the calls for service count, which incorporates the municipality's 4-year average calls count to determine their total billed calls for service hours. So again, by using this 4-year average, it prevents large fluctuations in cost billing to your municipality in the event there's a major spike in calls for service in 1 year. Again, it allows municipalities to anticipate and manage your billing according to the usage of police services. So the 9 billing working groups there are drug possession, drugs, operational 2, other criminal code violation, property crime violations, statutes and acts, traffic and violent criminal code. Now at the bottom right, you can see the total calls for service at the provincial level. Cost recovery is 178 million. And each year is broken down for the 4-year average. You can see exactly how many of calls you had for each category and how much time was spent in that category and the percentage that you pay for it. So again, your municipality's proportionate share of the provincial total of 178 million is $869,000, which is 0.5021% of the provincial total. And on pages 7 to 10, we can see your top calls for service from within your billing statement. So you see the 4-year average of all the calls that you've had. Important thing to remember is these are the calls that you've actually had. On our website, you can see all possible types of calls, or the UCR violation codes, we call them. And you're going to see a lot more on the website, but this only reflects what happens in your municipality. Again, I do touch on, so your highest percentage of calls for service were your operational calls. And that was again 0.2021%, which was $360,923. Your property crime violations at 0.0888% for $158,630. And traffic was 0.0629%, which is $112,375. Any questions on that? No? Okay, great. Next slide. So this is the cost overview again for Springwater Township. It shows your average cost per property for each year compared with the provincial average, and shows that it has gone down over the past 5 years from $322 per property to $287 per property. Again, this just shows that our billing model provides stable costing, stable charging for the services we provide. Okay, next slide. And again, this slide here shows how Springwater Township compares in terms of policing costs to your other municipalities, which Huronia West Detachment incorporates. As you can see, you're all a Section 5.1 non-contract policing agreement as well. Okay. Next slide. So here, if we look at your 2023 annual billing statement, you can see the breakdown for the costs of base services, calls for service, and other costs. Again, you'll see in the orange box, those are your base service costs, where it shows your property counts, the total properties, and the breakdown. And that's where you get the $165.66 times 8,600 properties. In the blue box is your calls for service, and the green box, your other costs. That again, it's all calculated and transparent. So Springwater has been billed for 8,600 properties. Again, when multiplied by your base service, that's where we get the $165.66. And overtime for your other operating costs, we'll just touch on that. You had overtime was estimated at $96,213. Prisoner transportation is $10,062. Accommodation and cleaning services are $41,882 for a total estimated cost of $2,469,416. Now you'll see the purple box, which is your 2021 year-end adjustment. And this accounts for the difference between the amount billed based on estimated cost in the statement and the actual reconciled cost in the year-end summary. So the most significant year-end adjustments are resulting from the cost versus actual estimated for overtime, contract enhancements, and court security. So you actually get reimbursed $4,589.
Yes.
All these numbers. So that's a good thing. But again, it just shows again, that's a pretty good, our estimates obviously work because it is consistent for what we provide. Any questions on that? No? Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So now we've covered off the cost of policing, we want to look at the differences between your Section 10 and Section 5.1 agreements. So currently, again, your municipality is policed under a Section 5.1 non-contract arrangement with the OPP. And as you know, again, Springwater Detachment operates on an integrated service delivery model and provides policing service to your and surrounding municipalities for effective policing commitments under the Police Services Act. So police service delivery and cost recovery remains the same regardless of whether your municipality is policed under a Section 10 agreement or under a Section 5.1 non-contract arrangement. When the Community Safety Policing Act comes into force, there will no longer be the option to have a Section 10 or a Section 5.1 agreement or arrangement. Under Section 5.1, there is limited eligibility to apply for additional government funding. Any revenue generated to the municipality is credited back annually, and there is no option for enhancement FTE positions. So I understand there has been some interest in considering entering a Section 10 agreement. And this option would give your municipality the option to participate in detachment commander selection process, monitor the performance of and review detachment commanders' administration of complaints and receive regular reports, eligibility to apply for additional government funding or grants. Again, also opportunity for mutually agreed upon bylaw enforcement. And you could also request civilian enhancement FTE positions that would be entirely paid for by your municipality. Currently, there is a moratorium on officer enhancement positions. We're trying to make sure we have enough officers and providing service to all the province. So currently you can't get an officer position, but you can get a special constable or a civilian FTE enhancement position. So those are if you have the Section 10 as well. If you go to the Section 10, you will be mandated to form a police service board, and you will be responsible for all costs associated to creating and maintaining a police service board. So again, policing services and the billing model will remain the same regardless if you go to either or Section 10 or 5.1. To enter a Section 10 contract, again, you'd be required to pass a bylaw based on the proposal and terms of a contract for a 3, 4, 5, or 6-year contract. This will be effective again until the CSPA or the Community Safety Policing Act comes into effect, which again, we're going to talk about in the next step to follow. Is there anything you'd like to ask or clarify on that? No? Okay. So again, next slide. This just again recaps, for your discussions, if you choose to enter this process. Again, you're going to have to decide on a term. We will draft the agreement. Again, you will confirm the agreement and pass your bylaw. You'll send it back. And again, we'll draft the final agreement. You will then sign and seal, submit it back to the OPP. We'll do the final revision, submit it to the Ministry of the Solicitor General for approvals and final signatures. And then when we receive it back, we submit it back to you. At this time, again, with CSPA, we have not been given any definitive dates as to when it will come into effect. And we're still awaiting for guidance for municipalities that do have a Section 10 agreement. We're not sure yet about renewals or what that process is going to quite be at this time. So it's a little bit limited. Okay. Next slide. So again, we're just going to touch on a little more about the Community Safety Policing Act. Once it comes into effect, again, it will replace and repeal the current Police Services Act. So it eliminates the distinction between existing Section 10 and Section 5.1 arrangements or contract agreements. All municipalities will have the option to consider agreements or for enhanced or additional services. Again, we do not know at this time how that will look like. It's written that you will be entitled to that, but we don't know what that process will be. Again, as of yet, it's coming from the ministry. The Minister of the Solicitor General has announced its development of the OPP Detachment Board Framework in May of 2021. Again, OPP doesn't determine the size or creation of these boards. The ministry required municipalities to submit the recommended compositions for their boards already. And from what we understand is if you haven't heard back, your submission was appropriate. So they have made contact with the municipalities that didn't meet the threshold for whatever reason. So have you heard back from your ministry, Brett or
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mark Coughlin. Through you to members of council, yes, the township has heard back. So in partnership with Wasaga Beach and our friends in Clearview, the composition that was submitted to the OPP was accept it, and that has been communicated to members of council via an email.
That's great.
Thank you.
for sharing. Clarifying. Yeah. That's what I had for this. Again, were there any other questions on this or? Pretty straightforward. Okay, next slide. Again, we do have additional resources available online, available to yourselves and to the public. You can always contact me or our bureau through email, phone. Happy to help out and offer support where we can. That's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Council, is there any questions or comments? And I'm not seeing any. So may I have a mover and seconder, please, to receive the presentation? Councillor Moore and Thompson, that the presentation from Detachment Commander and Sergeant Rotar and Sergeant Giffen regarding the OPP Municipal Policing Bureau be received. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm gonna leave some brochures here as well. You're the first municipality to receive them. So, we do have more if you would like them. And it just, again, a little more in-depth information and summary of what I spoke about today. And as always, feel free to reach out. It's a real pleasure being here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And of course, I'm always available if you.
Thank you.
Set up on the street, of course.
Council, may I have a mover and seconder for our confirmation bylaw? Councillors Fisher and Deputy Cabral, that bylaw 2023-043 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on May 3rd, 2023, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That is carried. And may I have a mover and seconder to adjourn, please? Councillors Garwood and Alexander, that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 5:32 p.m. to meet again in regular session on May 3rd at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you.
Thank you again. Good job.